It was late afternoon when the wealthy businessman's luxury car suddenly broke down on a quiet country road. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky in soft gold, but his mood was far from calm. He was used to people running to help him, used to solutions being just a phone call away. But here, on this empty stretch of road, no one seemed to notice his expensive suit or the sleek car parked on the shoulder. He was frustrated, alone, and for the first time in a long time, helpless. Just when he thought he would be stuck for hours, a woman walking home from the nearby market paused. She wasn't wearing anything fancy, just a simple dress, holding a small basket of groceries. But her kindness showed before she even spoke. She saw the stranded man, noticed the frustration on his face, and asked softly if he needed help. At first, he almost brushed her off. What could a stranger like her possibly know about fixing a car worth more than most homes? But something in her calm voice made him pause. She set down her basket, rolled up her sleeves, and with surprising confidence leaned in to take a look at the engine. The millionaire, used to boardrooms and business deals, found himself quietly watching her work, intrigued by her unshaken focus. In minutes, she managed what he couldn't, and the car roared back to life. Relief washed over him, but what he noticed next froze him in place. As she picked up her basket, the light caught a ring on her finger. It wasn't just any ring. It seemed personal, meaningful, and full of a story he didn't yet know. Who was this woman really? And why did that ring stir something so unexpected inside him? The man stood there for a moment, almost forgetting to thank her. He had met countless people in his life, business partners, investors, admirers, but no one quite like this. She didn't look impressed by his car or his expensive watch. Instead, she brushed the dust off her hands as if fixing a stranger's car was just another part of her day. He introduced himself, but she only gave a small smile and said her name softly before turning to leave. That ring on her finger caught his eye again, its simple design carrying a weight that stirred his curiosity. He wanted to ask, but something stopped him. The woman seemed private, guarded, as if she was carrying a story she wasn't ready to share. He found himself following at a careful distance, noticing how she walked confidently down the narrow road leading toward a small village. It felt worlds away from his city life, where everything was fast-paced and controlled. Here, there was a quietness that unsettled him, yet pulled him in at the same time. As he drove slowly behind her, questions raced in his mind. Why did she help him without hesitation? What kind of life did she live in such a modest place? And most of all, who had given her that ring, the one she seemed to wear not just with habit, but with a quiet sense of devotion? The businessman had never been the type to dwell on strangers, but something about this simple woman felt different, almost like fate had placed her in his path. He didn't know it yet, but helping him with his broken car was only the beginning of a story that would challenge everything he thought he knew about wealth, love, and true loyalty. The millionaire couldn't shake the image of her walking away, the late sunlight reflecting off that ring. Something about her presence lingered in his thoughts long after he restarted his car. The city was waiting for him, deals and deadlines stacked on his desk, but he found himself driving slower than usual, almost hoping she might glance back. She didn't. She simply disappeared into the narrow lanes of the village, leaving him with more questions than answers. The next day, instead of returning to his usual office routine, he felt drawn back to that same road. It wasn't like him to waste time, yet curiosity pulled him harder than reason. He parked near the village and walked through its quiet streets. Children laughed as they chased each other barefoot. Shopkeepers called out prices at the market, and the scent of fresh bread filled the air. It was a world untouched by his wealth, yet filled with a kind of richness he couldn't name. And there she was, carrying the same basket, her smile warm as she greeted neighbors, as if every person mattered to her. But the ring still troubled him. Who was it meant for? A husband waiting at home? A love she had lost but refused to forget? He couldn't tell. All he knew was that whenever she lifted her hand, it felt like a barrier between them. At the same time, whispers started to follow. Some villagers noticed the expensive car parked outside, and soon stories began spreading. Was he there for business? Was he trying to buy land? Or was it something else entirely? Even she seemed to notice the glances, though she said nothing. The man realized his presence was already stirring questions, not only in her world, but in his own heart. Days turned into a week, and still he found himself returning, each time convincing himself it was just to thank her properly. But deep down he knew it was more. He wanted answers, though every time he tried to ask about the ring, her smile shifted and she changed the subject. The more she avoided it, the more the mystery grew. He wasn't a man used to being ignored or pushed aside, yet with her, he accepted it, because something about her silence felt as powerful as her words. The villagers began to talk louder now. They wondered why a millionaire was seen so often in their simple town. Some thought he was scouting for investment, others feared he was planning to buy up farmland. And then there were those who believed he had fallen for the quiet woman who lived among them. Every whisper reached her ears, and though she tried to keep living as she always had, the weight of those rumors pressed harder each day. One evening, as the sky turned stormy and the wind carried dust across the road, he found her standing alone near the edge of the fields. She looked troubled, clutching the basket tighter than usual. He finally asked her what he had been holding back. Who gave her the ring, and why did she guard it so fiercely? For a moment she said nothing, her eyes fixed on the horizon. But the silence between them grew heavier, almost unbearable. Before she could speak, a figure appeared from the village path, calling her name. The man's voice carried a familiarity that made the millionaire's chest tighten. The woman froze, torn between answering the call and meeting his eyes. The storm clouds above rumbled, as if even the sky waited for the truth to break. The man calling her name stepped closer, his figure clear now against the fading light. He wasn't dressed like a villager, but neither did he carry the polished air of a millionaire. His clothes were worn, his face tired, but his eyes carried a familiarity that pierced through the silence. The millionaire's heart tightened as he noticed the way she instinctively shifted, as though torn between two worlds. That simple ring on her finger suddenly felt heavier with meaning. The stranger reached them, greeting her with a tone that suggested history, years of it. He looked at the millionaire briefly, his gaze sharp, almost protective, as though measuring his intentions in a single glance. The air between them thickened, filled with questions none of them wanted to ask out loud. Was this the man behind the ring? A husband, a fiancé, or someone else whose place in her life was still undefined? She tried to ease the tension, but her trembling hands betrayed her calm voice. The millionaire noticed how tightly she held her basket now, as if holding it together kept her from falling apart. His own thoughts spun faster. He had built empires by solving problems, but here he stood powerless, a bystander in a story he couldn't control. Then came the second twist. Villagers began gathering nearby, murmuring louder than before. One of them shouted, accusing the millionaire of trying to lure her away, claiming men like him always came to take what didn't belong to them. The words spread quickly, turning whispers into suspicion. The woman's eyes filled with panic as the crowd pressed closer, the stranger by her side stepping forward like a shield. The millionaire felt the ground shift beneath him. This was no longer about curiosity or fate. It was a collision of lives, choices, and secrets that could no longer stay hidden. The tension in the air reached its breaking point. The villagers surrounded them, their voices rising with suspicion, while the storm above cracked with thunder. The millionaire, for once, felt stripped of everything. His wealth, his influence, his usual power meant nothing here. All eyes were on the woman, waiting for her to speak. She finally stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear enough to cut through the noise. She lifted her hand, showing the ring. It wasn't a sign of wealth or luxury. It was worn, scratched, and modest. She explained it had belonged to her late husband, a man she had loved deeply but lost years ago. She wore it not because she was bound to someone else, but because she refused to let go of the promise that love should be honest and real. The stranger beside her was not a husband, but her brother, who had returned after years of working far from home. His sudden arrival had stirred confusion, but his presence was proof she was not alone in facing the storm of rumors. The villagers fell silent, their accusations softening into shame. The millionaire felt a strange mix of relief and something heavier, admiration. Her loyalty to a love that had ended long ago was unlike anything he had known in his world of fleeting deals and shallow promises. He looked at her differently now, realizing the lesson she had unknowingly given him. Some values cannot be bought or broken. But just as the tension seemed to settle, the twist came. Her brother turned to the millionaire and, with a firm but almost knowing tone, said, "You came here for more than a broken car. Be honest about what you want, because this village protects its own." The words lingered, sharp and final, leaving the millionaire at a crossroads he hadn't expected to face. The millionaire stood silent for a long moment, the brother's words echoing in his mind. For once, he couldn't rely on charm, money, or status. What mattered here was honesty. He took a slow breath and admitted the truth. At first, he had only been curious, drawn by the mystery of a woman who didn't treat him differently for his wealth. But over time, he realized he admired her for something far greater than what she had done for his broken car. He admired her strength, her humility, and her loyalty to values he had almost forgotten in his own world. The villagers listened carefully, waiting for a sign of insincerity, but his voice carried a weight they hadn't heard before. The woman lowered her eyes, her hand brushing against the ring. She didn't speak right away, but there was no anger in her silence, only reflection. Her brother gave a small nod, easing the crowd back, and slowly the tension that had filled the village square began to fade. When the storm finally broke into gentle rain, it felt like the moment had been cleansed. The millionaire offered no promises, no grand gestures, only gratitude for the woman who reminded him what real loyalty looked like, and for a village that taught him that not everything could be bought or controlled. She, in turn, reminded him with quiet dignity that love is not measured by wealth, but by truth and devotion. As he drove away, the road seemed less empty than before. He left with no certainty of what the future held, but with a deeper understanding of what truly mattered. Sometimes a broken car isn't just an inconvenience, it's a turning point. And sometimes the simplest woman carries the greatest lesson of all.